Honey, we need to talk. These terrible words came out of the mouth of my beautiful wife, to whom I was married for 5 years. I knew Deborah for 8 years, of which I waited 2 years before I was able to ask her out. She'd been in an ongoing relationship with Norman for as long as I'd known her, and I wasn't the kind of person to interfere. It just wasn't what was needed. I saw the harm caused not only to the couple, but also to the friends around them when someone tried to interfere in the relationship. Some friends chose her side, some his, and in one case another couple broke up when they took opposite sides. Deborah was 28 years old. I was 29, blonde and very well built. We enjoyed frequent intimacy, and I was happy with it. I thought she was too. We recently decided that we would start our own family and set a date to stop taking birth control. I was thrilled and couldn't wait to tell my parents that we were expecting their first grandchild. She sat down across from me at the kitchen table and pushed a manila envelope towards me. The caption read, "Excellent private investigations, discreet and effective." I looked at it for a bit and noticed that the seal was broken. "I don't understand," I began to say. "Were you following someone?" "Yes, Brian. Behind you." I wanted to shout, "Why?" But I managed to remain calm. These late nights at the office, these recent frequent trips out of state, this new pretty young secretary. She was calm, did not raise her voice, did not sparkle her eyes, as she sometimes does when we argue. It was as if she had already given up on our marriage and was simply delivering the finishing blow. In my defense, I will say that everything was within the law, and she knew about it. I wasn't having an affair, and I knew it. But how can I prove this? She must have some evidence to confront me. That feeling you get when the police are coming after you and you start to think, did I stop at the right sign? Am I speeding? And relief when they swerve to pursue someone else. I wanted that kind of relief. She gave it to me. "There is nothing in this envelope that tells me that you are having an affair or that you are doing anything beyond what you have already told me." "So why?" I stuttered. "6 weeks ago, Stephen called me and asked to meet for a cup of coffee. He wanted to talk about the surprise he was organizing for you. I met him at the Cape Bay Cafe. He looked worried at first, but then reassured me that he didn't mean to offend me and that I was a very attractive woman. He couldn't believe that you would do anything to hurt me. I knew Stephen for 12 years. During our freshman year of college, we took a psychology class together and formed a study group with other students. We remained friends and sometimes went to parties on campus. We ran after the girls, usually without success. After graduating, I began working as a business major while he completed a master's degree in human resources before starting to work as an HR manager elsewhere. We still talked on the phone and played golf every few weeks. He came to our wedding, but was not at the wedding party. Deborah continued, "He told me that you don't come to golf as often as you used to, and that when you do, you're delighted with your new secretary. He told me that he thought you were having an affair, perhaps only an emotional one, but he said that emotional relationships often lead to physical ones. He assured me that I should be aware of this and that I should be careful. I asked him about the detective, but he said that at this stage it was a waste of money and that if I followed what was happening, I would find out the truth myself. So why did you attract these guys? I thought that the evidence of your betrayal was enough for me to start thinking about divorce. I needed real evidence for the trial, but there's no evidence. So either you're smart enough to hide yourself, or you're not having an affair. Stephen called me several times to see how I was doing and to provide emotional support. So here's the thing, Brian." She looked me straight in the eye. "Are you having an affair? Do you need this secretary? If yes, then we will file for divorce and go our separate ways. I will not live in a relationship where they cheat." I approached my wife and realized that this was probably the hardest thing she had ever had to do. I took her hands in mine and said, "My dear, I'm not having an affair. Grace is a wonderful secretary, but her boyfriend would literally kill me. He is a state karate champion and owns and operates a fitness club. She's very happy with him, and even if I wanted to, I wouldn't have a chance. I'm wondering why Stephen did this to you. I think I better call him. No, wait, not now. I have a guess, but first I have to make amends to you. She dragged me into the bedroom and we made love for several hours. The next day we discussed the situation. What did Stephen have to gain by interfering in our marriage? He wasn't such a good friend. We could have just ignored him and left it at that, but I'm not that forgiving and I wanted to know the reasons and maybe get a little revenge. Our local priest would be unhappy with my unwillingness to forgive and forget. We have developed a plan. If Stephen calls again, Deborah will tell him that I have become distant and seem to be spending more time in the office. I had an out-of-state meeting coming up and I was going to take Grace with me. Of course, this is not true, but it could provide an opportunity for Stephen to reveal his intentions. As luck would have it, he called that same week. Deborah recorded the conversation even though we weren't supposed to, but screw it. It won't go to court anyway. How are you, Deborah? I don't know, Stephen. Brian came home late last night and went straight to bed. He didn't even say hello. What does it mean? I was afraid of this, Debbie. Deborah hated being called Debbie. It was her childhood dislike. Maybe he's working on some big project? Maybe he's due for a promotion? I'm not sure. He didn't talk about anything. Deborah added a little sadness to her voice. She could make a good actress. He's leaving at the end of the week, and I think his secretary will go with him. Ooh, that's a bad sign, Debbie. You should ask if you can go too. It would be nice to leave home and look after them at the same time. He wanted to seem sympathetic, but I couldn't help but notice some triumph in his voice. Good idea, Stephen. You are such a good friend. Call me tomorrow, please. I want to tell you if he agreed. The next day, he called almost immediately after I left for the office. What did he say to Debbie? He's very sorry, but the meetings will take place during the day and evening. He doubts that I will have time to see him. Apparently, the people he's meeting are only here for a few days and want to take up as much of his time as possible. So Grace also goes to make notes for them. I believe you need a friend, Debbie. Do you have any girlfriends who could keep you company while Brian is away? He managed to make my name sound disgusting. I hated him for this. I don't think so. Most of them already have children, so they need to be home at night. I'll try to think of something, Debbie. I can't have you being alone and worrying about Brian. I'll call you later, okay? Yeah, okay, Steve. Stephen also hated being called Steve, but he reacted differently than when I accidentally called him that a few years ago. His face turned red and he hissed at me that he hated that name and that I should never call him that again. 2 days later, I left for a meeting and took a few days off from the office to be at home with my wife and mistress. After lunch, the phone rang. How are you, Debbie? I'm worried about Stephen. He promised to call when his plane lands, but I haven't heard anything from him. What if something happened? He would call Debbie. If he was doing something wrong, he would want to reassure you so that you would not suspect anything. Okay. You're probably right, Stephen. I'll wait for his call. We had a nice dinner, and I was washing the dishes when the doorbell rang. I suspected who it was and hid while Deborah opened the door, holding a kitchen towel. No surprises as to who was at the door. However, the bottle of wine was a nice touch. The intruder made himself at home and poured 2 glasses of wine. Deborah sipped from hers, and he made soothing small talk about how she needed her husband's support and how she was a very attractive woman. When her glass was half empty, he filled it again. A sneaky move, she wouldn't know how much she drank. He also did not return to his seat, but sat down next to her and put his hand on her leg. I watched his actions. Deborah showed no sign that I was around. As he leaned in for a kiss, she turned her head in my direction and smiled as I stepped out of the shadows. What would you do if someone tried to seduce your wife? Stephen and I had a pleasant conversation, more pleasant for me than for him. He knew that he would no longer be welcome, as well as the fact that he had lost a good friend. I doubt I'll miss him after everything. I'll find a new golf partner. I just wanted to know why. Of course, Deborah is attractive, but there are other attractive women. Why the one who devoted herself to me? It turned out that many years ago, the girl he was interested in became interested in me, and nothing could stop this. When we broke up, He couldn't get her to go out on a date and was sure that I had turned her against him. Oddly enough, none of us remembered her name or what she looked like. Stephen, or Steve as we now know him, decided that revenge was best served cold. But he didn't realize that I never wanted to hurt him. I just wasn't interested in him. He left our home, and I put my wife to bed to begin working on adding to our loving family.